it was really very hard to deal with the wealth. I didn't know what to do with it. What do you do with that kind of wealth? It sounds odd. When you don't have money, it seems like something very desirable. But when you have too much of it, it can create quite a lot of problems. So from 2004 onwards, we published a lot of books, created a whole ecosystem of children's publishing that I think benefited the entire industry, I hope. Because actually India is a groundwater civilization. We actually have been an open well civilization, and after the bore wells came, we started digging deep into the earth for water, and 70% of our drinking water needs, 80% of our agriculture needs are actually met through groundwater.
So I wanted to start, everybody reads about you, everyone knows what you do. We'll come to that a little later. I thought we should go back in time to when you were a journalist. Young journalist, you got married to Nandan, and his co-founder started Infosys, which was a lot of pressure in terms of him not being around. And you, anybody who knows Rohini knows that she's not quite the shy type that sits quietly in the back seat. But you had to decide, to kind of put a little bit of a brakes on journalism and stay at home. So tell me a little bit about what was that like, and also that was at the beginning stages of Infosys. What was it like? On one hand, things were taking off like crazy. On the other hand, you had to deal with this personal thing of, okay, now a change in my status kind of a thing. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, I feel we were very fortunate. Infosys and my marriage happened almost at the same time. And, we were so young that we could afford to take any kinds of risks.
Yeah.
So Nandan just sort of, I remember I just said, Rohini, what do you think? Should I join this company? We are thinking of starting something. And we said, of course, that was the right time. So it was great, but for 7 years, literally in those days, people had to create software by actually going into the basement of the companies that they were going to write the software for and never come out to see the sun for days on end. So they were used to work on site all the time. So I was very lucky that we often had to go to the US for 7 years, and we had no possessions, no money. It was wonderful at the time. We were young, we could do that. And I really enjoyed being in the US with just 4 bags. And, we used to make our house whichever city we were in. And it was the public libraries that saved my life. And I wish we could have that here in India for people. Yeah. But we had a great time, so no regrets. But yes, I didn't see much of Nandan. Yes, that's true.
Secret to a happy marriage,
maybe
occasionally. So the next thing is, when you decided to come back to activism, so to speak, I want to talk a little bit about, obviously Infosys did very well, and we talked a little bit about wealth and the relationship to wealth, because when you grow up in a middle-class family, you kind of almost think bad people make money and good people study kinds of things. So when you came into wealth, what was it like for you initially?
Yeah, no, I've said this before. Surprisingly, it was very difficult for me to deal with the extreme kind of wealth that we came into, Lakshmi. And it took me years to settle down to the idea, because we were brought up to think, and let me remind you, in those days, in the early 90s, it was a hangover of the license Raj and all those kind of things, where you suspected that wealth was never made ethically in India. And that's not very fair to all the earlier industrialists. It was just sort of a middle class attitude that if you're wealthy, there must be something clearly wrong with you. So we had to, and even though I knew how Infosys and how the fortune came about and how dedicated and ethical the team was, it was really very hard to deal with the wealth. I didn't know what to do with it. What do you do with that kind of wealth? It sounds odd. When you don't have money, it seems like something very desirable. But when you have too much of it, it can create quite a lot of problems.
Yeah.
It took me a while to realize that instead of looking at it as a problem, I had to look at it as an opportunity. And then I realized that you could use that wealth, do many of the things that I always wanted to do, even as a journalist, to help others to make this world a better place.
Yeah.
Sounds like those Miss India kind of replies, Miss World or something.
Yeah.
I want to make the world a better
hunger.
place.
Yes. I think it's that, obviously money buys you freedom to do whatever you want to do. And you reinvented yourself as an activist. You really wanted to be out there. So you went into Akshara Foundation, and then you did Pratham Books, which I think is one of the largest publisher of children's books in India today.
Yes, it is. Yes. So it reached millions of children with good Indian, low-cost books, many of which are absolutely free in the Creative Commons. One of the greatest joys of my life is to see children reading our books.
So, one of the things we talked about is in Pratham Books, Indian children had children's books, but they were all American or German or whatever.
Most,
there were no
most Indian children, the only book they ever saw was a textbook, and you can't curl up with that at night. So we wanted to democratize the joy of reading. So from 2004 onwards, we published a lot of books, created a whole ecosystem of children's publishing that I think benefited the entire industry, I hope.
Yeah. And the other thing, when we first met many years ago, we talked about, you started Arghyam, and we talked about water.
Yes.
And we said that this is going to be a reason for conflict someday in a big way. And actually what's happening in Bangalore right now is an example of about that. So tell me a little bit about Arghyam and what were some of the things you did?
Yeah. When I came into a bit of money from the sale of Infosys shares, I wanted to put it all
I wanted to say your first personal
the first time I got 100 crores, at that time it seemed like a lot of money, and I wanted to put it all, every last penny, every last paisa into the foundation. And we said, what is it that we can do that is somewhat strategic, that's going to help and fill some gaps? And by God's grace, we were able to start work in water. We've been doing that for 12 years. We've supported fantastic NGOs in this country across 23 states. We worked very closely with several state governments. The goal is really to get communities to accept that there is a problem, but then help them become part of the solution. By understanding the resource of water, how critical it is, how we must try our best to use it sustainably, not contaminate it. And we've had tremendous amount of success. One of the things that we're doing right now is working on conserving groundwater all over the country, and also working to revive springs. There are millions of springs in India, undocumented. We don't have enough data, but they provide good, clean, zero energy, perennial sources of drinking water to people in many, many communities. And they also they feed all our rivers. Many of our rivers are not even reaching the sea. We don't think of these problems because all of us open a tap and get water.
Yeah.
But far too many people don't, and even we can't take that tap for granted. So all of us have to get water-wise, water-conscious, and through Arghyam we try to do a bit of that.
Yeah.
I believe that India has had some traditions of being a low-water society, coming from a very strong environmental justice ethic. But I think we also need to become a low-water economy, because there's no way you can achieve your economic growth goals if you don't look at the very key resource of water. I believe clearly that the economy also rests on the ecological base, and you have to conserve and enhance it. And that's the responsibility of our generations.
No, I just wanted to say, after doing all this work, all these years, you guys came to one area of focus, which is the groundwater. So
and sanitation,
And why did you say that's what you want to do, and what are you doing there specifically?
Yeah. India has spent hundreds of thousands of crores on surface water, creating command areas and dams, etc. But that money has underperformed so badly because actually India is a groundwater civilization. We actually have been an open well civilization, and after the bore wells came, we started digging deep into the earth for water, and 70% of our drinking water needs, 80% of our agriculture needs are actually met through groundwater. It's connected to surface water, of course, but still, to be able to make that invisible water visible so that we can manage it much better is what we have been trying to do, and working with government also to improve our groundwater management policies, which are woefully missing right now. Currently, you can dig a hole in the ground and you have a right to pull out the entire aquifer. We need to change some of those laws and make laws more compatible with this century's needs.
Yeah. So the last question is about, before we came in here, I was telling Rohini that, hey, we are doing Facebook Live of this session. Are you okay with it? She said, after we started, after Nandan went into politics, all my public stuff, I used to say, don't do this, don't do that. But after that, I'm like, anything goes.
Yeah, so, like people say privacy is dead, get over it or something like that with Facebook and WhatsApp and cameras everywhere.
So tell me about, what was it like when you took 6 months to decide, and he said it's all up to you. So if you did, it was you. If you didn't, it was you.
Yeah, that's right.
So how did it affect you? Effect is not the right word, but how did it change the way you lived and moved? You had to go give public speeches, suddenly become this other person. So what was it like for you?
Yeah, no, for those who don't know, my husband suddenly decided to get into politics and stood for the MP elections in the last Lok Sabha elections from Bangalore South, and really turned our lives topsy-turvy for quite a long time. It was one of the most tough decisions I've ever taken in my life to support that. And I'll tell you today that I'm really very, very glad that he went ahead and did this, because it's a big risk to take. And I'm very glad, because we always say, let good people come into politics, but let it not be me. But this time he said, yes, it will be me. And I had to say, yes, I'll support that as well. Well, he lost the election, but it taught me a lot, and I think those lessons will stay with me for the rest of my life.
So do you think?
And I hope at least 5 or 10 people in this room want to try to stand for elections. Because,
how about you? Would you like to stand for election?
no, I don't think so, because I don't think I'm quite cut out for it. And also, I hope my time is better used in other ways, though it's very important that some people do take that leap. How many of you are going to stand for elections? You have to try. It can
We
be
have one of our Ink fellows who says he's going to stand for
it can be the local third tier of government. You don't have to stand for Lok Sabha.
Great.
But it's very important that we do something like that.
Thanks, Rohini.
Thank you, Lakshmi.